Thank you, Commissioner. The next witness that I invite ANZ to call is Ms Sarah Stubbings.
Ms Stubbings, would you prefer to take an oath or would you prefer to make an affirmation?
I'll take an affirmation, please.
Yes, affirm the witness, please.
Good afternoon. I solemnly and sincerely declare and affirm
that
the evidence I shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you, Ms Stubbings. Do sit down. Yes, Dr Rush.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms Stubbings, is your full name Sarah Mary Stubbings?
Yes, it is.
And is your business address 833 Collins Street, Docklands, Melbourne?
Yes, it is.
And are you currently the head of Home Loan Product Australia at ANZ?
Currently, yes.
Did you receive a witness summons to attend to the Commission?
I did, yes.
Have you got that summons with you?
I do.
Commissioner, I tender the summons.
Exhibit 1.125, summons to Stubbings.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Ms Stubbings, were you requested to prepare a witness statement in response to questions from the Commission?
Yes, I was.
Do you have a copy of that witness statement with you?
Yes, I do.
Ms Stubbings, I understand that there are some corrections you wish to make to the witness statement.
Yes, I do.
There are 3 corrections, is that correct?
Yes.
Is the first correction at paragraph 52C of your statement?
Yes.
Is the correction that you wish to make at the end of the second line to delete March and insert July?
Yes. So you would like me to do that now and just initial
Yes,
that?
please. Yes. If you strike out what's wrong, put in what's right and initial it.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner.
Stubbings, the second correction I understand you wish to make is to paragraph 56B at the top of page 11 of your statement, and that is to delete the parentheses and all the words in the parentheses in subparagraph B. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
If you could do that, please, and initial it. Ms Stubbings, is the final correction you wish to make to paragraph 60 of your statement?
Yes.
And is the correction that you wish to make to delete the words in the parentheses on line 3 and to substitute them with the words based on the information obtained in March and July 2017?
Yes, that's correct.
If you could do that, please.
Thank you.
Ms Stubbings, is your statement now true and correct?
Yes.
Commissioner, tender the statement and exhibits.
Exhibit 1.126, witness statement, Sarah Mary Stubbings, and exhibits.
No questions in Chief.
Yes, Mr Donnelly.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, Ms Stubbings. My name is Albert Donnelly and I'm one of the counsel assisting the Royal Commission. Your current role, we just heard, is Head of Home Loan Product, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
And you've held that role since May of last year?
March.
March, I'm sorry. And I'm sorry about that, it is March. We understand from the statement that from next month, you will be Australia Division Executive responsible for large customer remediation programs in the new responsible banking team, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
At present, as Head of Home Loan Product Australia, you're responsible for delivering home loan products to ANZ customers, is that right?
Yes.
It's fair to say that the size of that portfolio is very large, with a value of approximately $265 billion, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Are you able to tell the Commission what proportion of the home loans on offer in Australia are issued by your organisation?
Our market share is about 15.7%.
I'm sorry, what number? You'll need to speak up a little more, Ms
All right.
Stubbings, sorry.
My apologies. It's about 15.7%, I think.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Now, in your statement, I might say helpfully, it's been necessary to distinguish between different issues that we're going to talk about today, and I'll use that same descriptor that you've used, and in fact that flows from the responses that ANZ's made to the Commission. You refer to certain instances of misconduct in a shorthand way of items 137 or item 138. Can I take you please to rcd.0001.0035.0088?
Is that in my witness statement?
No, I'm sorry, Ms Stubbings.
It will
Okay.
come up on the
Thank
screen,
you.
we hope, if the system works.
Right, okay, thank you.
Now, if you'd like, Ms Stubbings, we've also got some hard copies of some documents.
Yes, I wouldn't mind if I could have the hard copies, that would be helpful.
Yep.
You make these offers, Mr Donnelly, you've got to make good on them.
ANZ.
I can hear ANZ's submission about the Commission not delivering on its offers, Mr
Yes.
Donnelly.
I'm sorry. Maybe if it could be, what's on the screen could be made
Yeah.
a bit larger for Ms Stubbings, please.
I'm struggling to read that. Thank you. Thank you.
So if it's easier for you, you can use the written version. If we can go to point 0123.
It's the doc ID in the top right-hand corner.
Oh, okay.
It should be, I think. You've got 00123, or 0123.
I don't have any document IDs in
You,
there.
it's
Make life fun for you, Ms
Oh,
Stubbings.
item 137.
Okay,
so-
thank you, that's helpful, thank you. Okay, yes.
So when we talk about item 137, it's in fact two issues, and the first one is that between 2006 and July 2013, certain break-free home loan customers were charged an interest rate higher than they should have been according to the break-free terms and conditions. You see that?
Yes,
And the second issue is that in addition, between 2003 and December 2012, some offset accounts were not properly linked to home loans, resulting in customers being charged excess interest.
yes,
So when you talk in your statement about item 137, you're referring to two things. One is an interest rate, a higher interest rate that was applied than that which had been the subject of the terms and conditions, and two, a separate issue, which is that some offset accounts were not properly linked to home loans. Am I right?
yes.
Now, the break-free package is something that you speak about in your statement, obviously.
While the witness has it, are you going to
yes,
later go to item 138 or?
It might be easiest to tender those, to go to them, to identify them, and then to tender those pages.
Tender 137 and 138, it just declutters a bit.
Thank you. 138 should appear immediately below that. And that is described as a ANZ identifying certain further issues with break-free packages following the earlier break-free issues, and it was identified that the earlier remediation had not properly addressed the processes where customers selected a break-free package after drawdown or linked an existing home loan to a new break-free package.
Yes,
That's what you refer to as the item 138 issue. And for convenience, we might go to them now, although I'll deal with them sequentially. On the previous page, if that assists you, 135 appears, and that is that at a period of 6 months in 2016, certain customers did not receive the correct interest rate margin discount on their home loan. That's what you call item 135?
Yes.
And then immediately above that is item 134, which provides that between 14 December 2012 and February 2016, approximately 4,800 offset accounts had not been linked to an eligible retail home loan.
Yes.
And finally, if I can skip ahead a few pages to what you describe as item 151, you're probably quicker than us with the hard copy, Ms Stubbings. And that is, and I'll read it out if you haven't been able to find it there, but it's that some home loan and commercial lending accounts were not receiving the full benefit of offset arrangements due to the way the offset subsystem calculates interest as compared to the loan subsystem.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, and that's item 151. So I'm going to ask you some questions about those 5 issues this afternoon, although you've identified that item 137 has 2 sub-issues within it.
Yes, you mean in terms of the fees and interest?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Oh, sorry, 137 is the...
137 is the first one, which is the linking.
Yes, the linking, sorry,
and
my apologies.
the
yes.
wrong interest rate, which, if I may say, is the most significant of the items that we're going to discuss this afternoon.
And is it convenient to make items 134, 135, 137, 138 and 151 of ANZ response to 2nd February 18, inquiry RCD 001 0035 0088, exhibit 1.127?
That is convenient, thank you, Commissioner. Okay. Ms Stubbings, you've referred in your statement to the break-free package, which has been in existence since February 2003. Can you assist the Commission by explaining what is, or the nature of the break-free package?
So the break-free package provides customers with discounts on their home loans, on eligible home loans, and fee waivers on a deposit account, so whether that's an offset account or just a transactional account, a credit card, and it has some other sort of benefits around insurance sort of discounts and things of the like.
I see. So the benefits, just taking them one by one, is that you get interest rate discounts,
yes,
potential interest rate discounts, fee waivers for home lending accounts.
Yes.
And it's your evidence, or you've said in paragraph 12, and it's your evidence that the package is designed for customers who want transparent discounted interest rates on their home loans, as well as access to a range of benefits and products across ANZ. Is that right?
Yes.
And is that the main product, home loan product offered by ANZ?
Yeah, I think we say that 79% of our home lending is attached to break-free packages.
I see.
Yes.
I see. And customers are charged a $395 annual break-free package fee. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. And a necessary link as part of the... sorry, let me withdraw that. If a customer elects to have an offset account as part of the break-free package, then the offset account needs to be linked to the home loan. Is that correct?
Look, regardless of whether it's a break-free package or not, if a customer elects to have an offset account, then it needs to be linked to an eligible home loan to be effective.
Just for my assistance, the linking, how does that operate and why is that of significance in the context of the break-free package and generally?
Yeah. Well, the offset account is linked to the home loan, and effectively it reduces the amount of interest you have to pay on your home loan. So if you have a $50,000 offset account and a $100,000 home loan, effectively you're only paying interest on net $50,000.
I see. And for the offset account to work effectively, it's your evidence that it needs to be linked to the home loan.
Yes.
Can I deal, of the two 137 issues, the incorrect interest rate and the linkage? I'll deal first with the incorrect interest rate being the way in which this document can come down now. There were, if I understand it correctly, before 2012 there were ad hoc instances of customer complaints about the wrong interest rate being applied, is that right?
Before 2010.
Before 2010?
Yes, that's my understanding.
And is it right to say that ANZ identified that certain mortgage loan customers have been charged an interest rate higher than they should have been according to the terms and conditions?
Sorry, do you mean on an ad hoc basis? Or
Yes, on an ad hoc basis there were some that
Yes.
you'd identified before 2010.
Yes.
And in 2010, in your statement at SMS 1, which is ANZ.800.223.0977, I'm just calling it up. It's also easier, if it's easier for you, it's SMS 1, Ms Stubbings.
Okay, so that's the ASIC letter? Yeah.
So this is a letter from
Oh, to ANZ to ASIC, yes.
from ANZ to ASIC on the 17th of June 2010.
Yes.
What is this letter?
Well, this is a letter from ANZ to ASIC, basically identifying that there were potential issues with the way our break-free package was working in the context of the application of the right interest rate discounts, and also the issue with the linkage of the offset accounts.
If we can go to the second page, you deal with, sorry, the third page, which is 0979, you deal there under a heading 2, mortgage
Am I
customer.
able to have a paper copy of the
It should be in your statement.
Oh, my apologies, you're right, yes, thank you,
SMS
sorry.
1.
My apologies. Yes.
Page 3 of the letter, are we at?
Yeah.
Page 3.
Yes.
Which
Got
is,
that?
I don't think they should be numbered in the top right-hand corner.
Yes.
I've been referring
Yes.
to these numbers, which are all in the
Yes.
top right-hand
Yes,
corner.
thank you.
And it ends .0979.
Yes, I have it, thank you.
And you describe there the identification of the issue of this issue.
The break-free package issue?
That's right, under 2.
Yeah.
And if one goes over the page to .0980, you then explain the cause of the breach, and you go on to identify the fact that ANZ's current process of entering loan details, including the appropriate discounted interest rate, means that this error may have occurred at various spots along the process. That is, it could have been the branch staff initially entering the applicable rate. Do you see that?
Yes.
It could have been credit assessors entering a price for a broker, mobile lender. A second way. A third way could be where the centralised break-free team set up linkages of new accounts under an existing package. D, when a document preparation by staff generate loan, when document preparation staff generate loan documentation. Or 5, when servicing staff undertake maintenance actions where rate changes may occur.
Yes.
Just for my benefit, are those 5 different steps that occur in different places at different times?
Yes.
And the outcome was that a higher rate of interest than that provided in the break fee package had been charged on the mortgage lending.
Yeah. So effectively, a customer either didn't receive a discount that they should have, or they received the wrong discount based on the terms of the package.
I see. And this there was a meeting with ASIC to discuss this particular issue some time later. In fact, a meeting occurred in May 2011, which is, if you'll bear with me, There was a meeting with ASIC in about May 2011 regarding this product. I don't think you were at that meeting. You weren't in the
No, I
role,
wasn't.
but are you aware that there were discussions with ASIC?
I was aware there were discussions with ASIC throughout the course of the remediation period, yes.
I see, and I'll come back to that in due course. In your statement, you say that the first instance of error occurred in relation to the wrong interest rate on the 23rd of May 2006. Can you assist the Commission by explaining what that error was that occurred or how it came to ANZ's attention on the 23rd of May 2006?
The 23rd of May 2006 date is not the date necessarily of the first error. It's the date that we had data available.
I see.
In order to be able to determine the impact for break-free customers.
I think you just say in your statement that the instances of error were remediated on an ad hoc basis from 23 May 2006, is that right? And that then, if I understand your evidence correctly, there were various ad hoc remediations that occurred over a period of time?
It's not so much it's an ad hoc remediation. If there's a customer complaint,
yes,
and they're ringing up to say, I thought I was getting a 50 basis point discount, then they would ring up ANZ and we would reconstruct their loan on an individual basis and put them back into the position they should have been.
Well, I mean, the ad hoc is your language, though.
Yes.
You say, relevantly at paragraph 50, instances of error were remediated on an ad hoc basis from 23 May 2006 until the implementation of system fixes in 2012 and 2013. That is your evidence, isn't it?
Yes, it is. What I mean by ad hoc as opposed to an actual remediation program of work.
Yes. So there had been some remediation as early as 2006. This is in relation to the wrong interest rate issue.
Yes, on an ad hoc basis.
On the ad hoc basis. I'm happy to use that language. I'm going to tab 43. In fact, at a later point in time, but I want to take you to this for the purposes of understanding how these issues arose over time, PwC prepared a report. This is ANZ.800.223.1056.
Is this one of the ones that's in my witness
statement? It's not
statement
actually in
or
your
a separate-
statement, but I'll see if I can assist you in a moment.
Yes, thank you.
This is dated 29 November 2013. The barrister for ANZ indicated to me that you'd prefer to read things in,
Yes,
which is absolutely fine, so we're
Yes.
trying to attend to that.
Thank
and
you, I appreciate
apologise
that.
about that. So we'll just get a copy of that to you, but I can ask you some questions before that arrives. You'll see broadly, you'll see on the screen that it's the MBORP. Can you assist the Commission by explaining that acronym?
Yes, that's what the remediation program became known as, the Mortgages Break-Free and Offset Remediation Program.
I
So
see.
we just referred it to, it's quite wordy, so
It is.
MBORP was easier to
That's
refer
okay,
to.
we'll get into the lingo.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, thanks.
Take a moment to make sure that you've navigated to the right place. Ms Stubbings, just take your time and find where you need to be, and then we'll go on.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So this is a document dated the 29th of November 2013. It's a PwC report.
Yes.
I'd like to take you, if I may, to page 1, it ending point 1071. Can you explain, and that's just coming up on the screen now, can you explain to the Commission what that graph indicates?
It's my understanding that this is looking at just the error legs around the offset refunds over the period 2003 through to 2013.
I assume 2013 is picked as the end point because that's when the relevant what you describe as the fixes occurred.
Yes.
And so over the course of that time, and I'm not familiar with the term error legs, but does that indicate, is that what the term that you use to describe when an error has occurred that has required some form of remediation?
So an error leg is when at a point where the offset has either not been linked, so it would have been potentially a long error leg, or it might have been linked, it became unlinked and it was an error, and then it became linked again, so it's that sort of that error leg.
So does this graph deal with the application of the incorrect interest rate?
No, this is about the offset.
This is the offset. Okay, we'll return to it for that purpose then in due course. I might tender the document though whilst I'm there, if I may, Commissioner.
Exhibit 1.128, PwC report 29, November 13. Mortgage break-free and offset
Remediation program.
remediation program, thank you. ANZ 800 223 1056.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I can understand your evidence in this regard. When ANZ decided to write to ASIC in June 2010, am I right to say it wrote because it identified this as a systemic error rather than one that was merely the product of a series of ad hoc instances?
Yes, at that point in time, ANZ made a call that it was systemic.
Thank you. Are you able to assist by indicating how much remediation was made in the period from 2006 to 2010 because of this issue? That is on an ad hoc basis when someone complained.
I don't know exactly what it was between 2006 and 2010.
But it's your evidence that there was a number of ad hoc events that occurred where a customer would ring up ANZ and say, I don't think the right interest rate is being applied.
Yeah, so my that wasn't based on that time period. So mine was based on, I guess, sort of throughout the period when they did the calculation to determine how much to pay to customers. They identified that there was between $5 to $6 million in refunds that had already been paid to customers as a result of reconstructing their home loan accounts for either the offset reason or the interest rate reason, and that occurred anywhere between the period 2003 up to sort of July 2013.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so that's
for
across
clarifying
both.
that. So that deals with both, and that's
Yes.
why I think, if I may say, I think that's why item 37 is together, because it's been dealt with by ANZ internally along the way in relation to both.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Now, in fairness to you, you identify in your evidence that on the basis of the number of customer complaints about the 137 issues, now I'm referring plural to both of them, that arose prior to 2010, it's your view that ANZ should have realised that this was a systemic issue earlier than 2010, is that right?
Yes.
In fact, on the evidence that you've given, there was $5 to $6 million of remediation which was done because of these issues, even before the remediation that occurred at the start of 2014.
Yes.
And that was for the period from 2003 to 2013.
Yes.
Now, 2003, for the assistance of the Commission, is an important date because that's the date where the first ad hoc, to use your terminology, the first ad hoc instances that you've identified in relation to the linking issue. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. No, sorry. That September 2003 date is the date to which we had available data
I see.
with regards to the offset linkage issue.
I see.
Sorry, can I just understand that better than I am at the moment?
Yes.
Are you telling me there was no data available to you that would enable you to go back pre-03 and say...
Pre-September 2003.
Pre-September 03, you had no data that would enable you to go back pre-September 03 and find out whether there had been some problem or no?
That is my understanding, yes.
Yes. So that's what I'd understood. I just needed to check that was so.
In paragraph 49, you say, Ms Stubbings, that for the offset linkage issue, instances of error were remediated on an ad hoc basis from 23 September 2003, and that's the date that you've identified
that's
previously.
right, yes.
And when to understand, now I'm talking about the offset linkage issue,
yes.
The fact that a number of accounts you realised had not been, ANZ,
yes.
realised had not been properly linked to their home loans. The date at which that became, in ANZ's view, a systemic error was the 17th of June 2010. Is that correct?
Yes.
And do you know how many, this is in relation to the linkage issue, how many of those ad hoc instances had occurred between 2003 and 2010 before a decision was made that that was a systemic error?
No, I don't know how many of those ad hoc complaints had arisen.
But to the extent you can assist the Commission, it's in relation to the quantum of both of those
yes.
that had occurred from 2003
yes.
to 2013. Now, I know that goes over 2010,
yes. yeah.
but that's because the fix wasn't done
yes.
until 2013.
Right. Yeah.
Are you able to give me any feel, but maybe no better than a feel, for the number of customers who were in that period 03 to 13? And if you can't, you can't.
Yeah. Look, it's hard to say. I mean, my evidence was on the basis we paid out $5 to $6 million. That's not an insignificant amount,
sure.
Over that period. In terms of how many customers sit underneath that, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. Okay.
I might take you back to SMS 1 in your materials. The Commissioner asked about these ad hoc instances and whether or not you had a feel for those figures. If one goes to the second page of that, which is ANZ.800.223.0978, that's the second page of that letter. Are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm there.
Where you refer to the number of unlinked accounts about at a 0.7 of the page, can you see number and frequency of similar breaches? Number and frequency of similar breaches?
Yes, I can see.
There it says the number of offset accounts currently unlinked from eligible loan accounts is approximately 6,000. Can you explain whether that is that figure at that time that were unlinked that ANZ or discovered, or is it some other figure?
I don't know exactly what that 6,000 relates to or what time period. But I do know clearly we identified, many more offset accounts that were unlinked.
Yes, and in fact, we'll come to that, but ultimately there was a lot more where this issue arose, wasn't there?
Yes.
Staying with that chronology of it at that time, so this is in June 2010 that this letter was sent. If I can take you to ANZ.800.071.6787.
So is that in one of my witness statement items?
I might see if you're...
She has a bundle of papers, which I assume it's in the bundle of papers, is it? Or
I assume it would be, although I don't know if I can
Dr. Rush, is it in the bundle, do you think?
We're just going to look, Commissioner, just bear with me for one moment, if the Commissioner wouldn't mind. We've got a table of the documents and we're just going to...
Glad someone has.
Okay, could you give me tab 38? Okay.
I understand it's tab 38.
Tab 38, I'm told.
Yes.
Now, a lot of that document you'll find is redacted,
Yes.
or at least you might be able to see it. But if I could take you to the first page, it's headed Report of the Chief Executive Officer. What sort of document is this from your experience?
Look, I believe this would have been a report from the CEO to the board.
See? And as you can see, it's dated July 2010. Can you go to the third page, which is point 6789?
Yes.
And this issue was sufficiently important that under the heading legal compliance issues in mortgages, instances of overcharging customers in relation to offset accounts, break-free package discounts not applied and discounts loaded incorrectly, ANZ has been notified a provision of $20 million. Can you see that?
ASIC has been notified.
Yes. And a
Yes.
provision of 20 million has been raised.
Yes.
Now, with the benefit of hindsight, that was a very significant underestimate, wasn't it?
Yes, we ended up paying out 69.3 million.
And if I may tender that document,
Exhibit 1.129, ANZ 800 071 6787, report of CEO to board, July 2010.
and in fact, soon thereafter, that same issue, if I can go to an audit committee report, ANZ.800.088.1244,
Yes, I have that.
and it's tab 39. I think it
Yes.
might be the next tab.
Yes, I
for
have
you.
it. Yes.
Do you know what this type of document is, Ms Stubbings?
So this is a report from our auditors, KPMG, to the board, I presume as part of our year-end financial results.
Yes, for the year ended 30 September 2010, which was, of course, the year which included the relevant date when this issue arose as a
Yeah.
systemic issue. And if we can go to point 1257, which hopefully you also have, which is about page 13 or 14 of the document.
Yes, I do. Yep.
And again, you'll see a mortgage offset provision,
Yes.
$23 million.
Yes.
$23 million. And there's a statement there in the second paragraph. Management present estimate of the number of current customer accounts is now less than 1,000. Are you able to assist in any way as to how that figure had dropped so significantly since the June disclosure to ASIC?
I can't comment on that.
You'd agree that the figure that the then CEO had in his report to the board had a $20 million provisioning. This is now $23 million, yet the difference between the amount of people in the June letter and this statement seems to have decreased significantly.
Yes.
And you can't explain that in any other way, in any way?
No, I can't explain that.
And you'd agree, of course, that is, as things transpired, a very, very significant underestimate of the number of customers affected.
Yes, absolutely.
I tender that document if I may.
Exhibit 1.130, ANZ 800 088 1244, Audit Committee Report, year ended 30 September 2010, KPMG.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now, I've asked you already about the cause of or I've identified already the second issue within 137, that is the failure to link the offset accounts. I'd like to ask you some questions, if I may, about a document which is SMS 7 to your materials, and it is ANZ.800.223.1330.
Sorry, what were the last four numbers?
If you go to the first page.
Oh, so
to
first
start
page,
with,
yes.
and I'll ask you some questions in a moment. Now, you've said that customers were being remediated in relation to this issue on an ad hoc basis from the 26th of September 2003.
Yes, that date's based on when we had data available.
When you had the data, thank you. And can you explain what this document here is?
So the whole document?
Yeah, just the nature of this document that's headed Product Strategy and Marketing Mortgage for Break Free and Offset Remediation Project Checkpoint 1.
So this was a review by our internal audit function. They came in and did a sort of full review of where the project was at.
Yes.
Provided a rating of amber, which indicated that that the project was at risk of missing its timelines, and raised a number of issues with regards to where the project was at.
Okay, so this is about a year after the systemic issue has been identified, yes. And your internal auditors have said it's amber. What exactly does amber mean within?
So amber was that comment that I made, that it's at risk of not meeting its deadlines.
I see. Do you recall what the deadlines were at that time?
Look, I don't.
I'll take you to some other documents in a moment, but there was, I think it's fair to say...
They moved around a little, yes.
Thank you. They did move around. If you can go to point 1335...
Yes.
There's a reference to CAP system solutions and the addition of manual processes to fully stop the offset errors from occurring. What's CAP system mean?
CAP is one of our loan origination systems.
Yes. And this is 1 year after this issue's been identified, and the statement that's made in this document is, accordingly there remains the risk that the remediation approach adopted focuses on manual and detective controls rather than investing in system-based solutions which improve customer experience and help prevent errors being made.
Yes.
Am I right to say that at this time the internal auditors were suggesting that there was a risk that what was being done was a band-aid solution, if I can use that term, rather than a proper fix of this issue?
I'm not sure I'd say band-aid, but I think they're certainly suggesting that, we should be looking at system fixes as well as exception reporting or manual processes.
So what do you understand to be meant by system fixes?
So actually building automation into the system.
Yes.
So to prevent these types of issues occurring.
And at this time, the steering committee, the next sentence says, the steering committee has not decided on the long-term fixes, but discussions to date indicate limited appetite for the significant technology investment given CAP, SME constraints, broader technology constraints and the required technology spend. Does that help you to understand what was in the minds of those who were on the steering committee at that time?
Yes.
And they, at that time, had not decided on long-term fixes to this problem because there was limited appetite to make the investment in significant technology to stop this happening. Is that right?
I can't comment really on the appetite. I can comment on what ultimately was done, and there was certainly investment in system and automation to reduce the occurrence of these issues.
Having seen, though, sitting here now, having seen how long this has gone on for, this is something that is concerning, that this was what was in the minds of these people at that time, isn't it?
Look, I think they were still working through the impact from a customer perspective.
Because sorry, Ms. Stubbings.
Yeah, so I think they were still working that through. As that became clearer over the course of the remediation, it became very clear that system fixes were needed.
In fact, the project, it goes on to say, and this is the last section I'll take you to this page. The project is currently reviewing initial proposals for an interim fix to incorporate system fixes to cap at an acceptable cost and within a shorter time frame. You see that?
Yes.
And can I explore this, deal with this document in a little bit more detail if one goes to point 1337, so 2 pages on?
Yes.
The second last dot point, while the errors were identified, that paragraph?
Yes.
Do you accept, and is it the basis for your concession that these issues should have been identified earlier, that the complaints weren't properly tracked by product in the period before 2010?
Based on the information that's presented here, that would be...
And that was one of the reasons why the root cause of the common complaints, as this said, it couldn't be identified, or took some time to identify, I should say.
That comment would indicate that.
I'm sorry?
That comment would indicate that.
Yes. But it's also a view that you've formed yourself.
Yes.
And if one goes to the next page, now this is, of course, in July 2011. I accept I'm asking you about a long time ago and matters of which you don't have personal knowledge. But there's a reference here to residual risk, reporting of residual risk. And if one goes to the second paragraph, the business risks of the offset remediation was presented to the Mortgages Compliance Project Steering Committee in December 2010. This identified the risk of the offset error as having an extreme level of residual risk for the business, provision of 23 million made, resulting in a moderate consequence with almost certain likelihood. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Why is it that this goes on to say that the risk has not yet been formally tabled at the Australian Risk Committee, and there are no additional updates to reflect key events that have occurred since the issue was first reported?
I can't comment on that.
This is certainly something that ought to have been of concern to ANZ at that time, isn't it?
Yes.
And in fact,
Sorry, at what level in the bank should it have, to what level should the concern have gone, do you think?
If it's an extreme risk, then it goes up to the Operational Risk Executive Committee. It may have been a timing issue in terms of that they haven't, the timing of the meetings or whatever it may have been. I just can't comment on that chronology.
Understand that, but extreme risks are risks that you ordinarily would expect would
Yes.
go to OREC.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that right?
Yes, and there are papers in here that have been tendered to the OREC about the extreme risk, yes.
with the benefit of hindsight, and I am actually asking you, but obviously you're the person now in charge, but with the benefit of hindsight, these things should have been elevated at an earlier point in time, shouldn't they?
The fact that it hadn't gone to OREC, yes, I think that should have gone to them earlier, yes.
Thank you. Can I ask you about the process to fix this issue? It took, I think it's fair to say, a long time to put a fix in place, didn't it?
There were various fixes that were put in place. The system fixes will take longer to put in place, so tactical fixes were put in initially.
I'm terribly sorry, Ms Stubbings, you're going to have to
speak up. Sorry, Commissioner. What I was saying is that there were a mix of tactical and strategic fixes that were put in place. The tactical ones are easier to do. The strategic ones take longer because they involve system automation.
So what do you mean by a tactical as compared to a strategic?
That might be building an exception report or something like that, as opposed to actually building into our core systems parameters to limit what our frontline staff or assessment staff can put in terms of appropriate discounts.
One of the reasons you've described as a cause of these both problems was the fact that the information was being put into the relevant system. I assume that's the CAP system.
It could have been CAP, I know Borrow, or RLS as we call it, or MOS, which, yes, there's various systems, origination systems we have.
But they are, but the access to those systems was at the relevant time very disparate. That is to say, there could have been any number of people who could have inputted the information or forgotten, as the case may be, in relation to the offset to link the accounts. Is that right?
Yes, that is right.
And in fact, the offset issue arose predominantly because of that very thing, the failure to link the account, which had to be done manually.
Yes.
You say at paragraph 33 that processes and controls to prevent the recurrence of these issues were put in place progressively from April 2012 to June 2013. Is that your evidence as to when these fixes were put in place?
That's my understanding, yes.
And I'll take you to SMS 2. You'd be obviously familiar with this document, having prepared your statement. This is dated June 2014.
Yes.
And is a document, a summary for discussion. Who would have prepared this document?
I don't know exactly who prepared it. I presume it was someone who was a member of the project team. I don't know.
The steering committee, is that what it was called? If what you one goes to the second page, there's an explanation that due to the scale and complexity of the errors, the third dot point, the identity and fix activities were not...
Identify and fix, I think.
I'm sorry?
Identify and fix.
Thank you, Commissioner. The identify and fix activities were not completed until 2013. And likewise, if one goes down to preventative measures, there's a heading, preventative measures have been in place since 2013. And on the third dot point, it says, in addition, exception reporting was introduced to review 100% of accounts, both offset and break-free, and identify and fix any errors which may have still occurred. Are you confident that by this time the error had been resolved?
I think if so. We remediated offset customers up until December 2012, and we remediated break-free customers up until July 2013. So that was sort of at the point where we were comfortable that the indicators were telling us that the errors had been resolved.
And I was coming to the remediation. Can you inform the Commission how many people it turns out were remediated in relation to both the offset issue and the incorrect interest rate issue?
Yeah. So there were about 400,000 accounts identified as being impacted by the issue. 235,000 of those accounts received a payment, a remediation payment. The other 165,000 accounts had an impact of less than $2 for an open account or less than $20 for a closed account.
And your evidence is that the relevant steering committee was put into place in the second half of 2010 to deal with these issues?
Yes.
And the initial project, your evidence is that the initial project team made progress gathering the data necessary for the remediation from the start?
Yes, I believe so, yes.
And I know paragraph 35 of your statement, your evidence in paragraph 35 that the process of extracting that data was time consuming. Is it your evidence that it took until 2013 to fix the problem and to remediate all people affected by it?
Yes, I believe yes, effectively, because that's when we remediated the break-free customers up to July 2013.
When were you initially aiming to resolve this issue by? Do you recall what the initial time frame was?
Look, there's a few various dates. I'm not sure which is the...
when in the latter part of 2010, the committee was established, or perhaps if I can take you to a document to
Yes, that would be helpful.
explain this. If one goes to, and I'll try to get the relevant tab for you as well, Ms. Stubbings, but the document is ASIC.0011.
So sorry, could you please say that again for me?
I'm sorry, Ms. Stubbings, I won't be a moment. As at 16 August 2011, am I right to say that it was intended that the timelines for the process refunds and fixes for this project were to be finished by August 2012?
Could I have the document? Sorry.
Excuse me, Ms. Stubbings, Commissioner. Does she have it in her folder? Okay. I'm sorry, I won't be able to show you a document that, in relation to that, Ms. Stubbings, but if I could describe it in these terms, there was an ASIC briefing pack on the 16th of August 2011 entitled Mortgage Break Free and Offset Remediation Project. Mm-hmm. Would it accord with your recollection and your knowledge of these events that as at that time it was intended that the process would be finished by August 2012?
Look, I've certainly seen documents that have had 2012 dates, so yes.
See? Because... Then, if I can go to ANZ.800.223.0490.
Sorry, say that again.
Sorry, I'll call it up on the system and I'll hopefully be able to find where it is for you. Tab 10 for you, Ms.
Tab
Stubbings.
10. Yes, I have that.
And if I could take you to the third page, I think it is, point 0492.
Yes.
Now, in relation to the fixes, so this is the offset fix timelines, as at that time it was intended to be fixed by the 3rd of September 2012. Do you see that?
Yep.
In relation to the remediation, however, if one goes to point 0498, I'll just turn that around. You should be able to see it there,
Yes,
I
can.
hope.
Yep.
You see that the target date for that, this is the process refunds fixed accounts, has become TBC. Do you see that?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Am I right to say that essentially the timeline to actually resolve this only had any certainty when PwC became involved? Is that right?
We asked PwC to come in and do a review of where the project was at, and particularly around the refund calculation itself. That was an important piece, and also around the processes and controls that the project had put in place, and also around the next steps to really progress the remediation. So they were asked to do those three things.
I see. And in your and their involvement started, am I right to say that their involvement started in the latter part of 2012?
I believe it was August 2012.
Yes.
What date's the briefing pack, do you say, Mr Donnelly?
The briefing pack to which I've just taken, oh yes, that has to be tendered for, those two documents ought to be tendered. The ASIC briefing, the asset briefing pack, I don't have a date. I'll have to assist the Commission in a moment with a date for that. But there's two documents that I went to. The first is ANZ .800.223.3054, and that's the mortgage break-free and offset remediation process ASIC briefing pack. I have a date.
Have we been to that?
Yeah, I didn't tender two documents, Commissioner.
Sorry, I've lost myself. You haven't lost me, I've lost myself. I hadn't caught up with the fact we'd been to 3054. That's my fault, no doubt.
No, it's the two documents that I wish to tender for which don't have a date on them is...
We've got 0490 up. Can we deal with it first?
Yes,
That's Exhibit 1.131, ASIC briefing pack, ANZ 800 223 0490.
Thank you.
That's the next one. That's the mystery in my life,
Yes.
Mr Donnelly.
And the next one, which precedes it in time, but is also undated, although we'll get some dates, is also headed, has the same heading, Mortgage Break-Free and Offset Remediation Project, ANZ.800.223.3054. And
Has Miss Stubbings been taken to that briefing pack? That is the 3054 briefing pack?
Is that an ASIC pack, or is it the PwC?
Yes, I ask questions by reference, but I don't seek to tender the document at this stage.
Well.
I'm sorry, Commissioner. So I'll just tender the one that you have tendered, if I may.
Yeah, that's Exhibit 1.131. Yes.
Thank you. Was it so where we left your evidence was that in April 2012, PwC was engaged by ANZ, is that right?
August.
August, I'm sorry,
Yes.
2012.
That's fine.
And is it right to say that that ANZ at this time was not pleased with how the remediation process was progressing? Is that a fair summary of ANZ's position?
Yes, I think that's a fair summary.
And did you discuss the engagement of PwC with ASIC?
I believe ASIC were informed that PwC were doing the engagement. I don't think that was done before they were engaged.
And if I can, I might. Oh, can we move this document? Okay. And that was conveyed to ASIC at around the same time as when they were engaged?
I'm not sure of the timings. I've seen evidence that they were informed. Sorry, I can't remember.
And the
date.
first task that they did, you described a moment ago, was threefold. Can you? That was to review the fixes.
No, it was more about the remediation. So it was more around the accuracy and validity of the assumptions underpinning the refund calculation for customers.
Now, am I right to say that having started in August 2012, PwC remained working on this project for quite some time?
Yes.
And in fact, if I can take you to a document, ANZ.800.223.1041, I'll find out the...
So it's item 12.
Item 12. This is a document dated the 30th of September 2012. By this stage, PwC had been engaged for over a year doing different parts of their project, weren't they?
Yes.
And if one goes to point 1044 of this document,
Yes.
do you see how it appears that as at the 30th of September 2013, various recommendations were being made by PwC. Do you see those there in the middle of the page?
Yes, I do.
Was it a cause of concern that at this stage, 3 years after this issue had been identified, recommendations of this nature were being made?
These weren't recommendations so much about the refund or the fixes. These were more around some of the manual processes that sort of sat around the remediation approach. So things like how to deal with deceased estates, address validation, manual payments, things of that nature.
I think there's a reference to some of those issues above, including deceased check, etc. The purpose of taking you to it, though, is to identify whether or not this is, in September 2013, the process for the remediation occurring was still not resolved as at that date, was it?
I think there was about 12 or so smaller manual processes that sat around the broader refund and remediation calculation and payment piece, and we asked them to come and do some recommendations to make sure that we were comfortable with those processes, and they provided some recommendations of further checks and balances that we should put in place.
Can I just throw a spanner in the works, Mr. Dinelli? What's the date of this document? Is it 12 or 13? just went back through the transcript and...
2013, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I had a
second
note
time.
of 12 and there was an earlier note in the transcript. 13. Okay.
It is. Just to make that clear, that is after PwC was first engaged in August 2012.
Yes.
In your evidence. And PwC was still involved in aspects of that remediation program then, and in fact prepared another report
Yes.
on the 29th of November, and I might take you to that, ANZ.800.223.1056.
Yes, I have that.
Now, this document I've taken you to before for the purpose of identifying that the graph at point 1071. But perhaps before I do that, could I tender the previous PwC paper, if I may?
Exhibit 1.132, ANZ 800.223.1041, PwC QA review 30 September 2013. You ought to tender this one, which is...
This one here ought to have been tendered earlier.
Has it? Thank you.
Yes. I don't have any further questions on that. I would like to take you to a different issue.
Sure.
It was tendered as Exhibit 1.128. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now, you gave evidence before as to when the relevant remediation occurred. Am I right to say that it was, in fact, in 2014 when the remediation was concluded?
The remediation payments were made to customers sort of across January to April 2014.
That year. And the main form of communication was letters with them?
Yes.
And you deal with this at paragraph 29 of your statement. Some customers also got phone calls?
Yes.
As I understand it. How was it determined those which got a phone call and those which didn't?
The customers who got phone calls were customers who either got a sort of a large refund, so over $1,000. The option was given to call customers who were maybe relationship managed customers, so potentially commercial banking relationship customers. And I believe a number of our collections customers were also called, and also some of the customers who had previously made complaints or spoken to FOS about some of these issues.
And if I'm correct in saying it ultimately was the case that in relation to the break-free incorrect interest rate, that affected 93,300 customer accounts?
Yes, I think I've said approximately 93,000.
Yes, and that was $48 million, whereas the offsets were a total amount of $21.3 million.
Yes.
And that was in relation to approximately 308,000 customers.
Yes, but effectively payments were made to a smaller group because we had those thresholds around open and closed accounts.
That's right. And what did you do in relation to those thresholds if they weren't satisfied?
So if a customer had an error of less than $2 for an open account or less than $20 for a closed account, those payments were aggregated and paid across to charity, and there was about $716,000.
Yes, and I think that forms part of your evidence.
Yes.
So is it right to say, therefore, that in relation to some people who were part of this remediation process, they were being remediated in respect of matters that had occurred as much as 10 years earlier?
Almost 10 years. I'm just thinking the timeline. September 2003 and the offset customers. Yes, that's fair. Yes, 2014, yes.
So customers of the bank who had accounts at that time were informed for the first time then with these letters at the start of 2014 that there had been errors in the application of ANZ systems, the cause of which was that they had been overcharged interest or an offset had been not linked, the effect of which was also the imposition of higher interest, when that had occurred over a period of, as I said, nearly 10 years, or in some cases even more than 10 years.
Yes.
That's not good enough, is it, to have a process that is only capable of being, or an issue that's only resolved after that period of time for customers?
Yeah, look, my view is that the remediation process did take too long. We had not done anything like that, of that nature before. The first time we'd done something like that, and it took us longer because we were learning and we didn't have things in place like remediation frameworks or remediation principles. But what I will say is that we certainly learnt a lot as a result of the Mortgages Break Free and Offset remediation program, and it has sort of formed the foundation of future remediations that we have done.
Yeah, in fact, you, at the end of this process, had a key learnings document which was put together, didn't you?
Yes.
And you've seen that document, have you?
There's a few, so...
Okay, well, I'm taking you to one dated
April
2014, ANZ 800.800.223.1934. One of your colleagues, 22.
Oh, 22, thank you.
Have you seen that document before?
Yes, I have seen this.
It's quite, I think it's fair to say, based on your evidence, it's quite regrettable that it did take this long for customers to be remediated. Is that a fair analysis of what you just said?
Yes.
If one goes to point 1952,
Yes.
it's concerning, is it not, that there's a reference there to key learnings, which is speed of refund payments, that ANZ, as one of the learnings, said stagger payments to lessen the business impact versus refund all customer ASAP once payments commence. That's a matter of some concern, is it not?
Look, I'm not sure exactly what context they meant that when they wrote that, so...
That's right. Well, it does seem to consider that a relevant factor in the remediation of customers is whether is to consider in the course of doing the impact on the business, isn't it?
One lens on this may be that, they're trying to think through, do you just do 235,000 payments on one day, and is that manageable, and the chance of things going wrong, as opposed to actually having a pilot and then doing it over a 2 to 3 month period?
Although that's not what it says there, staggering payments to lessen the business impact isn't suggesting that the payments are made over different days, as you say. It's suggesting that other factors other than refunding all customers ASAP are relevant.
Look, as I said, I can't comment on what, the person who wrote that was thinking at
If
that
it was
time.
the case that it was being delayed by reference to the business impact or reputation of ANZ, that wouldn't be good enough, would it?
No,
That wouldn't be in the interest of customers,
no,
and it certainly wouldn't be in line with community expectations, would it?
no.
Just the first item on that page, Ms Stubbings, there's reference to a statute of limitations issue. Whether or not there was a statute of limitations in this case played no part in the decisions the bank made.
The bank went back as far as it could based
Yeah.
on the data it had available.
Regardless of whether a statute
Yes.
was engaged or not.
The next point refers to regulator engagement, and it's posed as a question, can you wait for detailed data to size the issue prior to notification? It's put as a question, but surely in your experience and having regard to the obligations on ANZ, the regulator ought to be informed as soon as it's necessary for the regulator to be informed, shouldn't it?
Well, I think in this case, setting aside the fact that I feel it took longer to identify this as systemic, I think at the point they told the regulator they identified 6,000 offset accounts. Obviously, we had a lot more than that.
You're familiar with the obligations on ANZ as a licensee under the Corporations Act, aren't you?
I have
Ms.
some
Stubbings.
level of familiarity.
The requirements under the Corporations Act, if there's something to be notified under section 912A, requires notifications to occur within 10 days. Are you aware of that?
I am aware of that.
So it would seem that if there was some need to inform the regulator, and I understand there wasn't, the regulator was here informed in June, and I'm not dealing with that, I'm dealing with what's the subject of these key learnings. Surely a relevant consideration, the determinative consideration would be when ANZ is required by law to inform ASIC, wouldn't it?
Look, we work with our legal and compliance teams in determining the appropriate point, but there does have to be a level of analysis done to try and understand what was the root cause of the issue, to what extent the period, extended over, a sense of some level of customer impact.
If I could perhaps tender that document.
Exhibit 1.133, Key Learnings Document, April 2014, ANZ 800 223 1934.
There was a similar analysis done, what was described as a post-implementation review, and you refer to this in your statement at SMS 6. It is ANZ.800.223.1917.
Yes, that's right.
And the purpose of this document, was it not, was to review the process and some of the key findings and to learn for the future, is that correct?
Yes.
On page .1921, there is a series of matters which are ranked where, and you'll see this at the bottom, where green means a great score, yellow a good score, and focus required, if it's in pink.
Yes.
In relation to project governance, it said that was 8.5, which is a great score. Do you see that?
Yes.
And the last dot point says the bottom line was very successful in difficult circumstances. The 2014 timeframe committed to ASIC in early 2013 was met. Negative media.
Yes.
Now, that having gone through the extensions of this process and the fact that PwC became involved in it, took nearly 4 years to get to the point of the remediation. Do you think that it's properly described as very successful, this process?
So this review was basically done from the point after the project reformed, effectively after that first PwC review had been done. So it was really, this is from the period, October, November 2012 through to 2014 that this is referring to.
Is the fact of no negative media a very significant factor in determining whether or not ANZ is successful or otherwise in a particular project?
It's one of the things we want to make sure we manage the communication well, that customers feel that they're well informed, so that would indicate that the letters we've provided to them, addressed the information that they needed.
It's also on your evidence, though, these very customers are the same customers that have had to wait 10 years for a refund of an amount they never should have paid. That's also a relevant factor, isn't it?
Yes, it is a relevant factor.
And that doesn't seem to be something that's the subject of any finding here or anywhere else, does it?
I think this is really around the project itself and how the project operated.
But the project's directed at ensuring the fair treatment of customers who have paid an amount that they never should have paid. Isn't that the position?
Yes.
Before I turn to the next issue, one other mark of the of this project would be that these sort of issues don't occur going forward, wouldn't it?
Yes.
But unfortunately, as your statement indicates, there's been a number of other issues that have arisen, haven't there, of a similar nature to that which was the subject of this, the major remediation, haven't they?
Similar, yes. Excuse me.
During the 137 issues, which we've just spoken about, during those 137 issues, one of the things that was considered was the likelihood of repetition of these problems.
Yes.
And that presumably would have been something that was of concern to ensure that it didn't happen again.
Yes.
And I'm jumping to during the 137 issue, just to put this in context, but if one goes to, can I go to this? Yeah. ANZ.800.033.2545, that's tab 3 for you.
Oh, tab 3,
Ms.
thank you.
Stubbings. And this is, or perhaps I can ask you to identify first what this document is.
So this is the Operational Risk Executive Committee meeting on the 16th of November 2012.
And what does the Operational Risk Executive Committee consider?
So they consider all risk across ANZ, sort of market risk, operational risk. Sorry, actually, that's not right. They consider operational risk. My apologies.
See? And there's been a reference to this before and to the timing of informing this body
Yes.
of what had occurred. And on point 2639, there's an explanation, and I won't...
Sorry, let me just find it.
Sorry, 2639.
Yes.
Now this, and I'm not labouring this point because I've dealt with it, but the action that was requested of was to endorse the risk acceptance request for an additional period of 12 months. We've dealt with the fact that there was various extensions. But if I can go down to the bottom right-hand corner, it says, post-treatment, the likelihood of a similar systemic incident occurring is expected to reduce to unlikely.
Yes.
So one of the intentions during the 137 issues was to seek to avoid the occurrence of any related or similar issues going forward.
Yes.
Commissioner, if I could please tender that document.
Exhibit 1.134, Operational Risk Executive Committee Agenda, 16 November 2012, ANZ 800 033 2545.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, where am I? Have I missed that? And just dealing with the level of or the way that this was treated within the organisation, that was, I've just taken you to something in 2012. In your statement at SMS 2, if I could take you to that briefly. This is a document we've been to before, being
Yes.
a review of the project. Where am I? What page? At 1968, there's a later OREC paper, April 2014. You'll see that at 1967.
Yes, I can see that.
And within that, it's now, the next page, 1968, indicates that this is to be an update to OREC for noting following the completion of the OREC-approved break-free and offset remediation program. Can you see that?
Yes, I can.
And the risk of incorrect pricing on offset accounts and break-free packages previously rated as extreme, as ANZ was yet to complete customer remediation and repayment. Now, by this stage, then, the remediation had been made, hadn't it?
Yes, it was finished in April 2014.
That's right. So it's about the time of...
Yes.
This is April 2014. And the residual risk has now been reduced to medium. Do you see that?
Yes.
Following the implementation of all required controls, the remediation of historical issues and the payment of refunds to customers.
Yes.
Now, likelihood, again at this time, is said to be unlikely. Can you see that in brackets?
Yes, I can.
I'd like to deal with the 138 issue now, to which I haven't yet referred, other than in introducing it. For the assistance of the Commission, can you explain your evidence as to how this issue arose and its similarities, if any, with the issues that we've been discussing?
Yep, so this issue arose when a team in our operational processing area was running some exception reporting to identify where customers had not received or may not have received interest rate discounts or fee waivers. And off the back of that, and that they ran those reports, I believe, between about July and November 2016. Off the back of that, they identified some customers who had not received interest rate discounts or fee waivers. Then the home loan product team then ran sort of 2 further extracts and identified that there were about 1,450 customers through to March 2017 who had not received fee waivers. And then there was about 1,400 accounts that had not received interest rate discounts through to, I think it was July 2017.
And is that, when you say they hadn't received interest rate discounts, are you...
Sorry, the appropriate interest rate discount. My apologies.
No, that was my fault. The appropriate discount, is that the same as the first of the 2 137 issues that we discussed?
Yes.
There was a Australia Division compliance incident assessment dated the 5th of October of last year in relation to this issue. It's at SMS 8. Now, by this time, you have personal knowledge of this incident, don't you?
Yes, I do.
On the first page of that document,
Can you
sorry,
give a call?
sorry,
number?
ANZ.800.052.1345. For your purposes, this is SMS 8. Ms Stubbings?
Yes.
And it said there that in the second paragraph, since the completion of the program, ANZ has continued to review its processes and controls. ANZ has recently identified that errors have again been occurring in relation to, and then break-free benefits and offset account non-linkages. You see that?
Yes.
Now, on the next page, 1346, it says, this third paragraph, MBORP focused on the root causes and strengthening the controls and process for new break-free packages and or new lending attached to a break-free package. While all break-free package holders who were not receiving package benefits, irrespective of root cause, were remediated as part of the MBORP, it does not appear that the MBORP considered whether the setup processes for existing lending and or post-drawdown opt-in in a break-free package were resulting in errors. Why not?
So the MBORP, so what it says is that MBORP basically remediated all break-free packages at
Correct.
that point. But the controls that were put in place were very much focused on new packages or new lending. The controls didn't contemplate customers who opt in to a break-free package after drawdown or 2 years down the track decide that they want their loan to now be a break-free package. And the reason we weren't picking those up is that they weren't a sale as such. It wasn't so it wasn't generating in our exception reports. It wasn't being picked up as a sale or renewal because they were reverting to the package after that event had occurred.
I understand, and that's consistent with what you say in your statement about how this issue arose, but it goes on to say in the very next sentence, the review of these processes and controls were not in scope for MBORP, and errors have continued to occur notwithstanding the remediation. My point to you is a different one. My point to you is why, in circumstances where a 4-year project, almost 4-year project was undertaken, did it not, or was it not in its scope that errors such as these would be fixed?
I can't comment on why it wasn't fixed back at the time.
But it wasn't.
No.
And in fact, in fairness, then on the next page, it said, as must be the case, in the second paragraph, the identification of the above issue has highlighted that there are further issues with unlinked offset accounts that will need to be remediated, following similar issues that were remediated by MBORP in 2013 and again in 2016, home loans only.
I'm just conscious my evidence doesn't refer to the offset linkage issue.
Sorry, Ms Stubbings, I'm terribly sorry. Can you speak up just a little more?
Yeah. I'm just conscious my evidence doesn't refer, the 138 issue doesn't refer to the offset issue. That was a separate line item in the misconduct and CSE table.
I understand that. I'm asking you, though, about this. I'm asking you how the program that was in place for that period of time didn't pick up these errors that I'm referring to.
Yes, these break-free errors, you mean?
Yes, correct.
Yes.
And I think it's your evidence that they weren't within scope because it didn't pick up circumstances where people swapped across from a different package. Is that right?
It wasn't so much a different package. It was if you'd already drawn down your home loan and then sort of 10 days later you decided, oh, actually that break-free package looks good, I'm going to opt into that. It didn't pick that up.
I understand. These errors that occurred that you picked up here, they were errors that had occurred between the period from July 2013 to about July 2017, weren't they?
Yes, I think it's to March for the fee piece and July for the interest piece.
That's 15, isn't it? We finished then. Commissioner, I think I'll be another half an hour with Ms Stubbings. And there may be some questions in re-examination, if that's convenient.
I think it's probably better that we come back tomorrow, I'm afraid. Ms Stubbings, is that going to inconvenience you unduly?
No, that's fine. No problem, Commissioner.
Yeah. Well, we'll adjourn until 9:45 if you can be back in time to start at 09:45. Ladies and gentlemen, there are a couple of matters that I want to take up before the evidence resumes. First, over recent days, the Commission has published 2 further background papers. Number 4, which is a paper about Australian law regulating consumer home loans, credit cards and car loans, which has been written by Jenny Patterson and Nicola Howell of Melbourne Law School. The second background paper, number 5, is a Treasury paper on reforms to consumer lending. Those papers have been published over the last few days. The second matter I want to take up concerns final submissions for this round of hearings. It is intended that Senior Counsel assisting will make a closing address on Friday this week, most likely Friday afternoon. In the course of that, Counsel will identify issues that are seen as emerging from the hearings that have been conducted over the last week and a half, by then 2 weeks. Ordinarily, the Commission will work on the basis that persons having leave to appear will have 1 week thereafter to make written submissions. Now, because the Friday following the close of this round of hearings falls on Good Friday, written submissions will be due by 4 p.m. on Tuesday, 3 April 2018. You will notice the particularity of the deadline. A time is given as well as a date. The time is not simply there to plump out the direction. The time is there to be complied with. 4 p.m. on Tuesday, 3 April. I then need to say something about the length and division of those submissions. First, an entity which is the subject of one or more of the case studies examined during the hearings may make written submissions about what findings should be made in respect of the relevant case study or studies. Those submissions by the entities in effect directly concerned may not exceed 25 pages in total. In addition, so on top of the written submissions about by entities the subject of one or more case studies, so in addition, all persons having leave to appear in this round of sittings may make written submissions on other issues raised by counsel assisting, and those submissions, again, may not exceed 25 pages in length. The third matter I want to raise concerns the next sittings. As has been announced on the website, the next sittings will commence on 16 April 2018 and will focus on financial planning and the wealth management industry. The fourth matter I wish to raise is this. At the end of evidence given by Ms Forbes yesterday, I drew attention to the fact that she had been asked a question premised on ANZ not having produced an email string sent in response to a letter from ASIC dated 10 January 17. See transcript 647 lines 8 to 20. The email string was dated 19 January 17 and is Exhibit 1.124, comprising ASIC 0012 0003 1696. Inquiries were made last night amongst the Commission staff and records, and those inquiries appear to confirm that email string was not produced. Attention was given to notice to produce NP 078, category A3 of which required production of any documents which record communications between ASIC and ANZ concerning the incident. The incident, as appeared from other parts of that notice to produce, was identified as item 153 in the second table to ANZ's response to the Commission's letter of 2nd February 2018. That item 153, is Exhibit 1.123. Dr. Collins, is there anything you wish to say?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. Those instructing us have investigated that matter overnight as a matter of priority, and I can inform you, Commissioner, that a letter has been sent this morning to those assisting the Commission setting out the results of that investigation. The ANZ accepts that the document in question falls within category A3 of notice NP 078. In short compass, the matter was reviewed but inadvertently misclassified as not responding to that category. The email in question formed part of a chain of emails. Other parts of the chain were produced in response to the to notice NP 078. Those matters are set out in the letter which has been directed to the solicitors assisting the Commission this morning. On behalf of the ANZ Bank, I apologise for the omission and assure you, Commissioner, that steps are being put in place to ensure that this kind of omission does not recur.
Again, it is a matter for you whether you answer this question. Has any inquiry been made about whether there was any other omission other than that which was identified? As I say, whether you answer that question is a matter for you.
Insofar as we have been able to investigate the matter overnight, the answer to the Commissioner's question is no. But can I say, Commissioner, that those instructing us are taking the matter most seriously and giving it anxious further attention.
Thank you, Dr. Collins. Is there anything else you want to add? No?
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Donnelly, it seems to me that it may be desirable that notice to produce NP 78 be tendered. It would become exhibit, I think, 1.135 if my records are right. Is that so?
I think that's
Exhibit 1.135 will be notice to produce NP 078 directed to ANZ.
If it would assist you, Commissioner, the court book number is RCD.0001.0606.
That doc ID should form part of the identification of the exhibit. Yes. Now, we were dealing, I think, with Ms Stubbings, were we not?
That's right, Commissioner.
Ms Stubbings, do you mind coming back to the witness box? Do sit down, Ms Stubbings. And can I just, forgive me if I say, can I ask you to keep your voice up?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner.
Ms Stubbings, can I return to what was described as item 138?
Yes.
And can you remind the Commission what that issue was?
Item 138 related to fee waivers and interest rate discounts on break-free packages for customers.
And that was something, an issue that arose between July 2013 and July 2017. Is that right?
Yes.
In fact, it arose at the end of the resolution of items 137, didn't it?
Yes.
And it was discovered, it's your evidence that this issue was discovered by ANZ in July 2017, is that right?
I refer to the fact that the fee issue was identified in March 2017 and the interest rate issue in July 2017.
See, and in fact, the former issue was based on a date range for various reports which have been prepared, in fact, even earlier, July to November 2016, wasn't it?
Yes, that was some initial exception reporting that highlighted that there was a certain cohort of customers that had been charged a fee that would have typically been waived under a break-free package.
And you informed ASIC of this on the 5th of October 2017, is that right?
Yes.
Was that a notice that was given pursuant to the Corporations Act?
I don't know
Perhaps
the
I can
answer
take
to
you to that document. It's SMS 9 to your statement, ANZ.800.223.155.
Yes.
Given that notice was given to ASIC on the 5th of October, that's approximately 3 months after you found out, call the date July. I understand your evidence is that you discovered some earlier issues even earlier than that, but you waited at least 3 months to tell ASIC, didn't you?
We were still investigating the matter in terms of the sizing of it. So once we got to the point of having a fact base around the sizing and the customer impact and the dollar impact, that was the point that we then worked with compliance and our legal team to prepare a compliance impact assessment and then inform ASIC of the matter.
On the previous occasion that I've taken you to where you informed ASIC on the 17th of June, that letter, which I won't take you to, but that was said to be, I quote, "We believe that these matters have the potential to be reportable under Section 912D of the Corporations Act." That language doesn't appear in this letter that I'm taking you to, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Are you familiar with the obligations upon ANZ to inform ASIC of matters, Ms Stubbings?
I have a high level of familiarity, yes.
Are you aware of ANZ's statutory obligation under Section 912D of the Corporations Act to make written reports to ASIC in certain circumstances?
Again, I have a high level of awareness.
And are you aware that written report has to be given if there's a breach or a likely breach of any obligation set out in Section 912A of the Corporations Act?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Where the breach is significant?
Yes.
Did you at the time turn your mind to this issue, Ms Stubbings?
In terms of whether it was significant?
Yes.
Look, I personally didn't. That's something we work with our compliance and legal people on. But, obviously in this case we had 2,900 odd customers that were impacted.
Are you aware that one of the factors in determining whether or not something is significant is to have regard to matters such as the number or frequency of similar previous breaches? Are you aware of that?
Yes, I am.
And in this case, given your evidence about item 138 and its similarity to 137, that would suggest, would it not, that this was a very significant matter?
I'm not necessarily saying it wasn't significant. In the context of Section 912D, I can't really comment on it from that perspective.
But in any case, you're aware that there's a 10-day period that notification has to be given to ASIC?
Yes, from once compliance has been engaged, yes.
Sorry, what do you mean by from once compliance has been engaged?
It's my understanding of the regulatory guideline around the ASIC reporting that it's a 10-day period.
Okay. Can I take you to, if I may, for your assistance, Ms Stubbings, it's tab 21, ANZ.800.223.1858. In fact, for the operator.
So the offset remediation project summary?
Oh, was that? Sorry. Sorry, I'll give you, it's not that document, it's RCD. I'm sorry if you found it, Ms Stubbings, in your materials, tab 21 of your... I think it might be a separate document that you've been given.
In tab 21 I have the offset.
No, it's not that document. There might be a separate document that you've been given just for your convenience so that you can read
this document here, do you mean?
Yes.
The Corporations Act?
Yes.
And got a doc ID for it, please?
Yes, I do. You got it. It's RCD .0022.0001.0090.
Sorry, Mr. Denali, is this the document you
Yes,
want me
it
to
is.
look
It's
at?
Corporations Act.
Sorry, thank you.
And if I can go to section 912D.
We're into the NCCP Act. So the RCD, the doc ID, I think, is not right.
I think it was 0190, not 0090. I take responsibility for that. I'm sorry about that, Commissioner, Ms Stubbings. So it ends 0190.
I don't have any numbers
Just
on
the
the
moment,
page.
the Stubbings, we're all at
Yes.
sea at the moment, just
But-
we'll get there.
I can see the shore, and it is now up, and I do apologise. And if what you've got before you in written form is some sections of the Corporations Act, I would like to go to 912D, which is at point 0209.
Yes.
And this is the provision to which we've been referring. A financial services licensee must comply with subsection 1B if the licensee breaches or is likely to breach. Then it sets out a number of obligations. And if one goes to the next page, and specifically to 1B, it's there that one finds the financial services licensee must, as soon as practicable and in any case within 10 business days after becoming aware of the breach or likely breach mentioned in subsection 1, lodge a written report on the matter with ASIC. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
There's no reference there to awaiting discussion with compliance, is there?
Not here, no.
And in relation to this issue, am I right to say that as of today, ANZ's still working through this issue?
Yes, we're still working through the remediation of that issue, yes.
That's correct. And work has started.
Yes.
But there's a report that I would like to take you to, which is which is tab 21 for you, and ANZ.800.223.1858.
Yes.
This is a document that I'm sure you've seen before, and it was actually dated last month, the 20th of February 2018. Do you see that?
I do, yes.
What is this document?
This is about the offset issue. It's not about the break-free issue.
I see. But part of the 138 issue?
It's not part of the 138 issue.
Okay. What issue then does this concern?
This is a separate issue, I believe, in the table we provided on the 13th of February.
I see. Can I in any case ask you a question about it? This is a process that requires remediation, does it?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and if one goes to point 1859,
Yes.
and am I right to say then that item 138 that we've been discussing is 2 rather than 3 and 4?
No.
Can you assist me as to which of the remediation, the various remediations that are being conducted, this paper deals with?
So item 1, MBORP, is the item we discussed yesterday. That was the 137 issue.
Yes.
The number 2 here, this relates to the item, I think it's C in my statement.
Yes.
Item C in my
C.
statement, yes. And then 3 and item 4 is item D in my statement.
Yes.
Item 3 is not questions I was asked about in my statement.
I see. And if you go to 1862, referring to this remediation that's occurring, do you see how there's a reference there to the project team must identify how to stop the bleed on both of these issues prior to refunding customers?
Yes, I see that.
Once again, is this like the document we went to yesterday, an indication that that perhaps the refunding of customers isn't put as high as a priority as ANZ as it should be?
No, I wouldn't say that. It's part of any remediation process. You actually have to stop the issue, because otherwise it's very hard to remediate customers if you've still got customers that are being impacted by it.
But
so what we have done is, for the customers who are impacted by this, we have linked their offset accounts. What we haven't done is remediated them for, the interest benefit they've missed out on in that period.
Are the customers aware of the issue that's arisen?
They may not be aware yet.
So is it your evidence that you've taken some steps, but the customers aren't aware of the issue at all at this stage?
So as I said, we've linked their offset accounts. They are now getting their benefits from the point we've linked them onwards, but they will need to be remediated and funds paid across to them for the fact that they missed out on those benefits over that period.
Okay, so sitting here now in relation to these issues, the customers haven't been informed yet?
I don't believe so.
And it's still unclear exactly when they will be informed, is that right?
We're working through the remediation as we speak.
But there isn't a date yet for when they will be informed, is there?
In terms of making payments, our current schedule has that happening before Christmas.
So, in relation to something that was discovered when, Ms Stubbings?
Well, we've talked about March and July 2017.
I see. Can I deal with...
Can I just get a better grip than I have at the moment on the chronology you've just been outlining? We begin the chronology, do we, in March and July 17, where an issue is, or two separate issues are identified. Is that right?
Yes, it's a little bit confusing because those are actually the break-free issues.
Right.
This is an offset issue. So, sorry, actually, it's a good point. My correction. This relates to the period up to March 2017 for the offset issue.
I see.
So the offset issue, when do I start the chronology running? I want to try to get in my head the chronology that is relevant. What's the first relevant entry in that chronology, do you say, Ms Stubbings?
So the period for this issue, that wasn't covered in my statement, was effectively, it's really from January 2016 onwards that these linkages errors would have occurred, because of the item we have that's C in my statement. We would have fixed all the unlinked offsets up until that point, which was January 2016. So this relates to the period January 2016 through to March 2017.
I see.
And yes, so we've gone through the process of linking all those offset accounts for customers who are impacted by this.
But again, just as I say, I'm anxious to understand the chronology. The errors or failure of linkage occurs between January 16 and about March 17, is that right?
Yes.
On discovery, the linkages are made?
Yes.
And in what sort of time period are we talking?
Look, I don't know exactly by what time they were linked, but I have been informed that those accounts have all been linked.
Are we talking, though, days, weeks, months? Are you able to give any estimate?
It would be months, yes.
So over a period of some months?
Yes.
Links that should have been made but had not were made?
Yes, once the item had been discovered, yes.
Stopping the clock at that point?
Yes.
Has the customer been told anything?
The customer hasn't been told yet, no.
What's the next step in the chronology? The links are then made. What happens next?
Yeah, so we've built a new sort of tool to pick up these linkage issues, because clearly they have persisted. So we've built that out so we can stop the issue reoccurring. We are now going through the process of getting the data to refund these customers. And
has the customer yet been told?
No.
And are you able to offer any expectation or prediction about when the customer or customers are likely to be told?
So the intent is that that will be done, prior to Christmas was our timeline.
So Christmas 18,
Yes,
in respect of events
dating back to
occurring between January
2016.
16 and March
Yes.
17.
Yes.
Do you regard the time thus identified as satisfactory or unsatisfactory?
Look, I think we've definitely focused on the fact that we've had, this recurrence, and we needed to build a new tool to enable us to manage that, so we can stop that happening and impacting other customers, and that's definitely been a focus. We've also been very focused on making sure those customer accounts have been linked so we can minimise the impact to the customer, and now we really need to, take steps to remediate and refund those customers.
Just to round off this attempt at understanding, do you yet have an estimate of how much money we are talking about for the customers as a group?
Yeah. So for the 2,800 odd that were identified through to March 2017, the estimates we had were about $1.5 million.
Yes, Mr. Dinelli.
Thank you. There are a number of issues, as your evidence has shown. Can I move... before I do that, I tender that the document to which I've just taken you, if I may.
That's Exhibit 1.136 will be Offset Remediation Project Summary, 20 February 2018, ANZ 800 223 1858.
Thank you, Commissioner. The next issue that I'd like to deal with, and I will try to deal with these remaining issues and then have a couple of questions by way of summary, but is item 135, which is the language we've been using, which was an interest rate margin discount issue.
Sure.
Am I right that this happened because an operational processing team in Bangalore made a decision to process in relation to certain interest rate discount requests that weren't properly marked, the result of which was that they weren't correctly actioned? Is that correct?
Yes, that's effectively correct.
So how did that happen, Ms Stubbings?
So from May 2016 sort of through to December 2016, there'd been a 50% increase in interest rate discount requests from customers with existing home loans. So prior to that period, the team had been doing about 8,000 a month in March and April, and it went up to over 12,000 in May and June. And as a result, to save time, they made a decision to not mark as closed all those open interest rate discount requests.
Did ANZ have processes in place requiring the active marking of these requests as completed or closed?
Yes.
And if they did, why didn't they work?
Well, as I said, the team took a decision to try and work through the volumes in the interest of, helping our customers. And unfortunately, as a result of that, it meant that some customers' interest rate discount was not applied to their home loans.
But it's fair to say that this was another failure of process, wasn't it, at ANZ in relation to item 135?
Yes.
And perhaps if you can assist me in terms of the timing of this, when did you say the issue was discovered by the person in Bangalore?
That was in December 2016.
And I understand that it was resolved relatively quickly?
Yes.
And then this issue was reported to the Australian Division of the Risk Committee, is that right?
Yes, in April.
In April?
Yes, 2017, yes.
By that time, you'd already identified the cohort of home loan accounts that were impacted, hadn't you?
Yes.
You'd already obtained data to determine the size of the customer detriment.
Yes.
Yet the compliance incident was only made on the 19th of April. Some 4 or 5 months later, before a view was formed that it was important to tell that risk committee, is that right?
The way the risk committee works is they meet monthly, but one of their meetings is on credit risk items, and then the second month it's on operational risk type of items. So depending on the cycle of that risk committee, that would have impacted the timing of when this was presented.
But even on that analysis, there would have been at least 2 meetings that it could have been produced at earlier.
Look, possibly they don't tend to meet in January, so I can't comment. I don't know exactly which cycle they were working through.
Why does it say, if one goes to SMS 13, why does it say that it was reported on the 21st of February 2017?
I can't comment on that.
Your evidence was that this happened back in December, wasn't it?
Yes. Well, we first became aware of it in December.
Yes.
It wasn't until a couple of months later that we had a good view of the sizing and the impact.
Again, it doesn't. There doesn't seem to have been much urgency in bringing it, though, to the attention of the Australian Division Compliance Committee, was there?
I understand that it was certainly raised with the operational compliance, teams and with the operational leadership team.
What do you think the reputational impact is of something like this for ANZ?
Oh, look, I mean, clearly there's a failing of process here. And, I think from my perspective, that the reporting that we had on the team and, and how they were performing relative to their service standards was based on closed accounts, not open accounts. And if we'd had reporting based on open accounts, we would have identified this issue, significantly earlier. And that, to me, is sort of, really the core of what sort of failed here.
Do you think it's accurate to say that the reputation impact to ANZ is low as a result of this incident?
Look, I think, when we go through and assess these types of things, we look at the time period it persisted for.
Is it low with Stubbings?
I think these things are relative. So, I mean, as I said, there were failings here and there was a failings of process.
If I may say, though, another one, wasn't it, Ms Stubbings?
Yes, it's
and that's a relevant
incident here, yes.
And if one goes to, and I'm sorry it's come down the document, but if I take you to back to that document, which is ANZ 800 052 1461 at 1465.
Do you happen to know what the tab number
yes,
is?
It's SMS 13.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
It was the document we were in.
Compliance impact assessment, yeah.
In fact, there you see that when this report was made, on 1465, it says reputation impact to ANZ low.
Yes, I see that.
Did that inform at all why, again, it took so long to begin putting the correct interest rates in place?
I mean, I actually think we clear on that. So as soon as we found out, we sized it, we obtained the data and started the process immediately to correct those customers and refund them.
When is it, on your evidence, when did you apply the correct interest rates?
So that was over the period June to September. And then we made refunds to customers in the last week of September, and letters were sent to customers in the first week of October.
So unlike the example we'll speak...
Sorry, you dropped your voice.
Sorry.
Refunds were made in September?
Yes, so refunds were made in the last week of September.
Yes.
And letters were sent to customers in the first week of October.
Yes.
And interest rates were corrected between June and September of 2017.
Did you turn your mind to 912D again in this context?
I wasn't in the meeting when the compliance impact assessment discussion was raised.
Do you know what what was determined?
Yes, I do. So they determined it wasn't significant.
I see. So you can't comment on whether or not they had regard to the number and frequency of similar past breaches?
I don't think we've had a similar breach of this nature. I do know they had regard to the time period that it persisted over, which was 6 months, the number of customers impacted, the dollar impact, which has been about $980,000.
I'm sorry, 980?
980, yes, Commissioner.
And number of customers?
1,860.
That decision as to whether or not to inform ASIC was reconsidered about 2 months later, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Were you part of that decision?
No, I wasn't.
Is it common to reconsider whether or not a disclosure should be made?
Well, I think based on further information, I think that the team wanted to make sure that we were still comfortable that that was the right decision.
But the same conclusion was reached, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And the customers have now been remediated in relation to this issue, but it remains the case that ASIC hasn't been notified of it?
That's right.
Can I go to item 134?
Sorry, can I just understand who makes the decision, report or not report to ASIC? At what level or what body within the bank makes that decision of report or no report?
Yeah, that's with sort of key business stakeholders, sort of people at my sort of level, and then we do that with our Australia Division Compliance folks. So with the head of Australia Division Compliance, we would make that decision.
Commissioner, if I may tender that, that document is actually...
It's in, I think.
It's in, it's SMS 13, apologies. Can I ask now about the last two issues, or first if I can deal with item 134.
Sorry, is item 134 item
134,
C?
which you deal with at paragraph 89?
Yes.
Or in fact, yes, it is at paragraph 89. This is the one that you referred to as C before?
Yes.
And this was an issue that was persisting from January 2013 to January 2016, whereby offset accounts were not linked, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Forgive me, of course, but that's, of course, the very same issue that we've dealt with in relation to some of the other issues, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And your evidence is that the coding instructions, in your evidence at paragraph 94, is that the coding instructions in the macro were amended so that the customer with more than one eligible home loan and an unlinked offset account were able to be identified and passed through the processing team for linking?
Yes, so in all cases, the macro wasn't identifying where there was more than one eligible home loan for the offset account to be linked to.
The fact that those coding instructions were changed, and it appears were changed relatively quickly, suggests that before that, do I take it that there was nothing in place to deal with this issue?
Look, before that we weren't aware it was an issue.
Now this issue was identified in September or October of 2015, is that right?
Yes.
And again, or on this occasion, the Australia Division Risk Committee was informed in April 2016, is that right?
Yes. And look, the reason being, that was when we first got a sense that there was potentially a problem. So we've been doing some decommissioning work in around, let me just check the date. I think it was, September, October 2015, and we identified a cohort of customers that didn't have their offset linked to a home loan. We then spent, about 3 or 4 months getting the data that we needed to run that across our entire offset population to determine to what extent more broadly was that an issue.
I understand that, and I understand that you commenced the home loan reconstructions in March 2016, and in fact you sent letters soon after.
Yes.
My point is this, though, yet still at this point, this significant issue, another offset issue arises, yet you don't report this to the Australian Division Risk Committee until April 2016.
Yes, so I don't think it was really until February/March that we had a good view on the number of customers.
So on this occasion, it wasn't because there wasn't a meeting. On this occasion, it was just because you didn't know what to report to the Australian Division Risk Committee until February or March. Is that your evidence?
Yeah, we were working through the data to determine to what extent across our offset portfolio had this been a broader issue. And then, I think we had a view on that by February. And again, it would have been impacted by the timing of the Australia Risk Committee and what various forum was on.
But you were paying refunds to people before you'd even told the Australian, told the Australian Division Risk Committee, weren't you?
We started reconstructing the accounts in March, that's right.
And if and your evidence though is also that those refunds and correspondence to affected customers occurred as early as March 2016.
Yes, that's right.
What's the Australian Division Risk Committee meant to do at ANZ?
So the Australia Division Risk Committee has oversight of the risks for the Australia Division, so our credit risk, operational risk.
Risks of processing errors that have gone on for years?
Yes, they have oversight of those types of things, yes.
Yet this, and I think this is the fourth of the issues we've dealt with, although we also went into another one, yet this happening on your evidence, February or March 2016, sorry, if I withdraw that, on your evidence, this issue was discovered in late 2015, yet you didn't go to the Australian Division Risk Committee until April 2016.
Yeah, there was a smaller cohort of customers we identified at that point. It wasn't until we'd done the analysis across our entire offset population, and particularly because that was a different product set from what the first cohort had been identified, we were trying to understand that.
And the only information that you gave to ASIC in relation to this was your colleague, Ms Edelman, rang up ASIC, didn't she?
She did, yes.
But there was no written notification given?
That's right.
Ms Stubbings, can I ask you quickly about what you raise at paragraph 105?
Yes.
Am I right to understand that in the course of preparing your statement you've identified that there was an issue in relation to the remediation process in relation to this very issue?
Yes.
So a further issue arose by reason of preparing this statement?
Yeah, it's not so much a further issue arose, it was more when the remediation was done. The data that was taken was based on all open accounts as at January 2016, and we have identified that it did not pick up customers who'd closed their accounts between January 2013 and January 2016.
So the process that you had in place to resolve this very issue didn't pick up those closed accounts?
Yes.
And you realised it when you prepared this very statement for this Royal Commission?
Yes.
And so that's another issue that now is the subject of a process requiring remediation at ANZ, isn't it?
I wouldn't call it another issue. It's part of this issue. It just wasn't identified at that point in time.
Do you see the issues as separate issues or all as one issue?
I see the fact this is all part of the same issue.
The last issue that I'd like to raise is that which we've described as, or you've described in your statement as item 151.
That's item D?
It is item D?
Yes.
Can you explain the nature of this issue in relation to what's described as backdated offset transactions?
Yes, so this involves how our various, we have a core system and it has a couple of subsystems, so one for our lending accounts and one for our offset accounts. And the way that the two systems have worked together has meant that in certain scenarios, customers have not received all the offset benefits they were entitled to. And so for the backdated transaction issue, the way our loan system works, it recognises transactions and calculates balances on a daily basis, whereas the offset subsystem recognises transactions and calculates balances on a business day basis.
Now this issue, or can you tell the Commission when this issue was first discovered?
So it was first raised as a possible issue by ANZ Technology in September 2014.
Well, that's not quite right, is it? It's actually as early as 2011 the issue was, there was certainly reference to the possibility of this issue, wasn't there?
I don't think it was raised as an issue as such.
Well,
it was certainly discussed in the design of the MBORP.
But I'd like to take you to that. If one goes to SMS, if you go kindly to SMSB, 18B, I'm sorry, which is ANZ.800.321.0011.
Sorry, I don't have the numbering on my pages.
SMS 18B.
It should be on yours, in your...
Just trying to find it.
That's okay.
Yes, I have that.
And if one, or perhaps I can ask you what this is a meeting agenda for?
I believe it was a meeting agenda for the MBORP became known as MBORP. It was previously called the Mortgage Compliance Project, so this is effectively the Mortgages Break Free and Offset Remediation Project. It changed its name.
I see. And you weren't involved at this time?
No, I wasn't.
If you go to point 0019, please. Which I think you'll find is about the 6th page of your document.
Yes.
And the top word is rate reductions. Can you see that? That's
yes,
how
I
it
can see that.
commences.
Thank you.
Can I take you down to the first dot point, the project manager, the first dot point at about 3/4 of the way down the page. The project manager presented the following. Do you see that?
Yes.
There, the project manager, in the course of preparing what you've described as what became the remediation project for the first issue that we discussed yesterday.
I still can't find. Are you saying where it says the project manager advised standard practice?
No. So this is...
You've got a heading item 3, interest overcharge calculation.
Yes, I do have that.
Immediately below that, is it, Mr. Dinelli?
Yes, that's right.
My apologies, thank you.
Right.
The project manager presented the following. This is a similar issue to item number 2, but he goes on to say the project calculates the interest on the actual balance on the date or dates the account is in error. It does not take into account transactions made in the future and backdated to a prior date. In other words, it takes into account transactions made on the date of the transaction as opposed to the previous effective dates. Now, I can't quite understand that, but is that the very issue that we are dealing with as that subsequently became item 151?
So I think what the project is talking about there is the calculation engine that they have built.
Yes.
And whether they build in this concept of backdating transactions, which is effectively enabling the likes of loan accounts to be, any transactions on a Saturday or Sunday or whatever it may be.
So back at the time of this meeting, okay, this is before the committee has changed name to become the MBORP. So July 2011, the very issue that's come up now 6 years later was something that at least was on the radar of those that were designing the very fix at that time.
Yes.
Yet ANZ didn't put in the relevant fix back in 2011, so 6 years later this issue actually comes to fruition.
I think it was on their radar. I don't think they were necessarily saying it was an issue as such. I think what they were saying is they weren't intending to replicate what happened in the production environment into their refund calculation for this element.
And I think you gave evidence before, consistently with your statement, that the issue was raised by ANZ Technology in about September 2014.
Yes.
I'm not going to take you to it, but it was also raised in 2013. So it was raised on a number of occasions, and it appears that around September 2014 the issue was referred to an external firm for legal advice and any necessary further investigation. Is that right?
Yes.
How long, and I don't want you to tell me what that advice was, but how long did that firm take to get back to ANZ about this issue?
We received that advice back in May 2016.
So another 18 months went by between September 2014 and when that advice was received in May 2016, didn't it?
That's right, yes.
Has ASIC been informed about this issue?
Yes, ASIC has been informed about this issue.
And when did ANZ inform ASIC?
ASIC were informed on the 16th of October 2017.
And can I recap so I can understand your evidence? You accept that in 2011, in the agenda that I took you to, it might have been my words, but I think you accepted them. It was on the radar of the committee right back in 2011.
I don't necessarily think it was on a radar as an issue. It was just in terms of the calculation and how they were going to apply that to the mortgages and break-free remediation.
But it was something that was, I won't verbal you, it's something that was known by those.
There was awareness, yes.
Thank you. And then, as I said, your evidence was that ANZ Technology raised in September 2014. It then went to a law firm. That took 18 months. May 2016. You make then a notification to ASIC on the 16th of October 2017.
Yes.
Can I take you to your SMS 19, which is anz.800.077.1180?
Yes, so the ASIC letter.
Is this the letter dealing with this issue?
This is the letter that was sent to ASIC, yes.
Dealing with this issue?
Yes.
Under the heading Nature of the Issue, it says ANZ has undertaken proactive systems testing on the expected benefits of offset arrangements. Do you see that?
Yes.
That's misleading to say proactive, isn't it?
Well, we were doing some analysis around how our systems operate in relation to our terms and conditions.
Well, you weren't being very proactive if you'd known about this issue since 2011, were you?
Well, I guess it was something that we had done, as part of that review.
But the issue within ANZ was known to it for many years prior. It wasn't.
I think what I'd said is awareness. We had
awareness, yes.
And as I said, there was an acknowledgement it was an issue at that point.
But ANZ, well, even if you assume that on your evidence, September 2014 is when ANZ Technology raised it, even then, it's wrong to say, isn't it, that ANZ was undertaking proactive systems testing?
Yes, you could take that lens.
Well, in fact, it was misleading ASIC. It was saying to ASIC, we're being proactive about these issues, we're dealing with them, when in fact ANZ wasn't dealing with them.
I think we were proactively certainly reviewing our terms and conditions and how our systems operated at that point.
Now, those who've been affected by this particular issue, how many customers have been affected by it?
We haven't identified yet how many customers have been affected.
And the number of accounts?
Haven't been able to identify that yet either. What we have been able to identify is the types of transactions, and there's a lot of complexity that underpins those transactions. So it's a very transactional level issue, as opposed to something being wrong with an account in this case.
Yes, I understand that, and I understand that to be your evidence about when you described the backdating.
Yes.
Is there any timeline for remediation in relation to this issue?
Again, I believe we're working through to try and have this resolved by Christmas.
And how much remediation do you estimate will be the subject of this particular issue?
Look, we're still sizing it. I think we've provided some initial estimates of around about, 13 to 15 million, but it's still being sized.
So 13 to
15
50.
to 15, did you say?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I haven't been keeping a running total, Ms Stubbings, so forgive me, but the various matters you've spoken about in your evidence have led to various sums of remediation. Have you done the total in your head?
Sure. I mean, certainly, look, the ones that we have paid out have been about, of the ones that are in my evidence, are about 75 million. But we are yet to pay out, obviously, on item D and the second break-free issue.
Now, they're the ones that are in your evidence.
Sorry, can I just, the last two you mentioned, not yet paid out, are estimated at, in the one case, 13 to 15.
Yes.
In the other case?
It was about 2.8 million were our current estimates.
So, round numbers, 90 million all told, is that right? 75 plus 13 to 15 plus
Yes.
2.8.
Yes, that's fair.
If
Yes.
we said 90, correct to the nearest decade, as it were.
Yes.
Yes.
They're the issues that you dealt with in your statement. Can you assist the Commission by informing it how much has been paid by ANZ itself in relation to remediation of customers over the past 10 years?
So we have called out that there's been at least $130 million in addition to the items that are in my statement.
And does that include, though, is that only remediation that's actually been paid?
That's remediation that's been paid, yes.
So you would have to add to that, at the very least, and perhaps other items, but at the very least you'd have to add the two items that we've just referred to?
Well, that's what I was saying. This is distinct from the items in my statement.
Yes.
So it's 130 plus 75 plus 13 to 15 plus 2.8. Do I capture that?
Yes, you have.
For these issues to have occurred and to have occurred so often and in respect of so many ANZ customers is certainly unsatisfactory, isn't it?
Yes.
And in fact, it demonstrates that there are issues within ANZ in relation to the processing of data and customer information in relation to their home loan accounts, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we've called out in our submission that, delivering the standard of banking and financial services that customers, do expect of us has led to a level of complexity in our systems and processes, and that has contributed to these issues.
And you're putting this complexity...
Just a moment, Mr Donnelly. What it's led to, correct me if I'm wrong, what it's led to is that customers have been charged the wrong amount of interest on their home loan.
Yes.
And in round numbers, it's of the order of 220 million.
So can I just correct you, Commissioner, on that?
Yes, of course.
So the 130 million is not just in relation to home loan items?
Yes.
So that's in relation to various items in the 13th of February submission.
Yes. Yes. So, but if we confine our attention to the 90 million,
yes,
that's 90 million attributable to amounts wrongly charged in respect of interest on home loans. Is
yes,
that right?
interest. There's a little bit in there around fees, but yes, interest as well.
The fees, is that a material contributor to the 90?
It's a relatively small part.
So I keep muttering to people I've got to end up writing something about this, Ms Stubbings. At the end of it, if I took as a an indication of the size of the problem, approximately 90 million. Am I in error? If you think I am, please say so.
That is to do with the items that have been called out in my statement.
Yes.
There are possibly other items in the table that may relate to home loans. I just haven't
Yes.
looked at that.
Yes, thank you.
I put to you yesterday that the fix of these various things over the years has been a band-aid fix rather than a proper fix. Isn't that an accurate description, Ms Stubbings?
No, I think we've certainly put in quite a few system fixes. So we've put system fixes into what will be our strategic home loan origination system. So we have built into that system all the parameters around loading interest rate discounts, all the parameters around offset linkages, and all the parameters around the population of break-free forms. Now, we are moving, we've said in our submission that a really critical thing for us is to move it. We've got 3 home loan origination systems. We're moving to 1. And we're targeting that's meant to be in November. And those core system parameters and automation are sitting in that system.
But these problems have kept on happening, haven't they, Ms
Yes.
Stubbings?
Yes.
And that falls short of what your customers expect of you, doesn't it?
Yes.
And what community expectations would be of ANZ.
Yes.
Do you accept also that it amounts to not providing the financial services efficiently, honestly and fairly?
I'm not sure I'm the right person to have a view on that. I mean, I certainly,
Yeah, I'm not asking you for a legal opinion. In the end, if there's going to be one, I'll have to express it. But you're the relevant bank executive.
Sure.
Do you think it is providing the financial services efficiently, honestly and fairly? If the customers charge the wrong interest rate.
Yeah, look, I think if the customers charge the wrong interest rate, then that is not a good outcome for a customer.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner. No further.
Just, can I just pursue that a moment, Ms Stubbings? The questions I've asked you have treated a number of separate events as leading to a result which I've described
Yes.
with a single expression, being charged the wrong interest rate.
Yes.
At least to that extent, would you accept that the various matters of which you have spoken are events that have some similarities?
Sorry, Commissioner, just so I understand your question, that the fact that we've had some recurrences, do you mean, in terms of similarities? Or
We've spoken of a number of separate events.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
And you've spoken of identifying, in effect, particular reasons for each of the particular events. Is that fair?
Yes.
What I'm searching for is whether you can describe the separate events as having similarities between them.
Oh, look, I think each event has had an element of, a system or process failing.
Because a question that I may have to look at is how, if at all, Section 912A and 912D of the Corporations Act were engaged with respect to these events. And 912D, in part, turns on to significance of breach, which turns in part on number or frequency of similar previous breaches. Now, it's the similarity of the previous events that is the area I'm asking you to comment about.
Yeah. Look, I think the interest rate discount issue was quite a separate process sort of issue. I think what's happened in item D is quite a nuanced system issue. But I mean, clearly what we've called out in item A and, the reoccurrence of that in item C, I mean, there are similarities in those issues.
Yes, thank you. Mr Donnelly? No?
Thank you, nothing
Does
further.
any party other than ANZ seek leave to examine Ms Stubbings? No? Dr Rush?
No re-examination,
Yes.
Commissioner.
Thank you, Ms Stubbings.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You may step down. And I should excuse Ms Stubbings, should I not? Yes, you're excused.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Attendance, Ms Stubbings. Where to now, Mr Donnelly?
Commissioner, it might be convenient for you, Commissioner, to have a brief break. I intend to open very briefly in relation to the issue of car loans, and the first witness is a consumer witness, which concerns a car loan she obtained from Westpac. So
Yes.
it may be that the parties need to arrange themselves.
5 to 11, I'll return at 11.
Thank you.